I released my first commercial game about 12 years ago. It was called Vertex Dispenser. And, well, yeah, I'm a bit, confused that it's been so long. I've been in indie, selling for that long. I've said before, I don't really think pandemic time ought to count, so make it 9 years. But I want to talk about vertex dispenser. It's kind of a real-time strategy game. It's on a kind of grid, controlling territory between different players. I was playing a lot of StarCraft and Dota and doing a maths degree and sort of came out of that. It's in some ways a typical Michael design in that it has a lot of layers that you wouldn't expect to interact with each other, which do. So it's set on a 3D model, basically, an assemblage of points and lines between them and faces, mostly triangles, encircled by the lines. And on this 3D surface you move around a little ship that goes from point to point and captures territory. Your territory is the corners of the polygons, and if you connect all the edges of a polygon, you capture the entire polygon. And the points are your basic nodes of territory, but they generate resources for you, which you can then spend on abilities. The edges between them are your movement network. You move around quicker on edges that you've captured. If you haven't captured, you have to capture and then move on, so it takes roughly twice as long. And the faces, the polygons, are defense turrets. They pop up and shoot attacks out at an enemy who comes next to them. So if you just capture the nodes, then you own that territory, but it's easy to take if you fill it in by capturing all the internal edges, so that you form up those faces. That's a way of building up defenses so that it's better protected. So it's using the structure of a 3D model as the elements of a real-time strategy game: resource gathering, movement networks, and defense structures, rather than defenses being an extra thing you build on top of the map. It's embedded in the map itself. I think that's cool, maybe. I thought it was cool at the time, at least. And then this is where it gets a little bit weird. It's also a puzzle game, and the nodes you capture are coloured according to a simple rule. The colours are numbered 1 to 7, and each node takes the smallest number not on any of its neighbours. So, and then the higher ones are more valuable in that they give you the resources for more powerful abilities. So there's a mathematical puzzle and how to not just if you do a like just greedy capturing, the getting the nearest nodes and expanding out from there, you'll get like 4 different colors. But if you circle around and carefully connect it up, you can force the high ones, and that's kind of interesting. And like you're doing this at the same time as like it's a real-time strategy game. Like your territory is being attacked and you're trying to defend it. Like it's I was young. It's a clever idea to try and mash these things together. Yeah, I was really like, I felt like it was really inspired to like bring these different elements, and like video games are magic, and you can have lots of things happening, and it's like beautiful how the different layers interact, and like it is, but like it like it's understandable that it wasn't like a hit, because like that's a lot. But it's a lot with not many elements, which is elegant, which is like nice, and like, yeah. Yeah, so that's where I was, and like I made it all by myself, and so it took a while because I was learning to do a lot of different things. I've made small games, and like since a child, since I was my brain just did a like Portuguese grammar scrambling there. Like I forgot the natural English way of saying it. Since I was a child, I've been making little games, originally in BASIC, so it's like not good software development practices. So there was a lot of learning, just like how to scale up to something bigger. I ended up having to rewrite large chunks of it basically from scratch multiple times, because I'd organized it in a way that was not actually possible to build up. But that's learning that I had to do, and how to organize a project, and like, you know, I've been able to, yeah, it took way longer than I expected, but it gave me a lot of understanding of how to scope and organize projects better after that. And so I've been able to actually successfully make games, which is good. Yeah, I had to learn to use like 3D modeling software. I won't say I did a great job, but like it's models, like it's a multiplayer real-time strategy game, so I had to network it, which like it wasn't, you know, I was playing StarCraft and Dota, so it's like this is how multiplayer games are played. But like game networking is a lot of work to get right, and yeah, I read every resource I could find on game networking, and I tried to build it in a way that made sense. It's difficult because of the weird nature of the game, that it's a fast action game and a strategy node-based game. There's a lot of solutions that work for a zoomed out strategy game. Like, you know, in StarCraft there's a delay between you clicking and the unit actually responding to the order, because it reports back to the server and that actually feels thematic. Like if you're a general giving orders, like it's okay that they're not instantly obeyed, because like there's a communication time, so that feels reasonable. That's not acceptable when you're directly controlling a single ship. Like, it has to be responsive. So some solutions don't work, and then like there's some solutions that work well in a continuous space. Like if things are like in different positions on different clients, you just smoothly interpolate, and then and you can't smoothly interpolate when it's discrete, and nodes are a discrete step apart, and it's fundamentally different whether you're on one or the other. So the model I ended up using was like conceptually simple, but like not ideal. It was like everything has its own, every client has its own state, and like when you get signals from another one, you roll back and then run forward, and like if there's a high ping, then there's discontinuities, and I didn't handle those because it was just getting too complicated. Like, yeah, I don't have a good way of doing that. And yeah, in the end, it's a little glitchy, especially if there's a lot of ping. And like, I thought it was more stable than it was when I released it, because a lot of my testing was locally, or like at least with people in the same country. But yeah, it turns out a little bit broken sometimes when it's with people far apart. Yeah, like an indie multiplayer game, you can't count on getting that many players, and like the players might just be here, there and everywhere. So you really want it to actually work between them. So, but yeah, I was like driven by this shining inspiration. I was like, this is the concept for the design. So I wasn't thinking about like, you know, now if I was like, I want to make a multiplayer game that gets actually played by people, I would like start from those constraints and come up with a design that works well with a networking model that accommodates people being far apart, preferably like asynchronous even, like, because it's just to get people playing it at the same time. Like, it works well for these Blizzard games that have a giant player base. It does not do for me. Like, yeah, I didn't really have a good conception of the relative scales at the time. Yeah. Yeah, so it did end up getting played at all, which is like great, but it was hard for me to really look at, because like when it got out of sync because of the ping being too high and like it glitched out, then like I would like really like viscerally stress out like that, because that's my responsibility. I should have, I'm blaming myself, I should have thrown on the spirit, but like that was just me. Like, people were just like, oh, it's like out of sync, hopefully it'll get back in sync. Usually it does. Like, yeah, I mean, yeah, like there's like computer games kind of suck, and we're used to that. So like there's actually a fair amount of tolerance for bugs, but like I really stressed out. Like there was, like obviously, like I realised that it couldn't be multiplayer only, so I made like a AI for computer players, which like again was a bunch of work. Like the fact that it's on a discrete grid is actually an advantage to it. Like it's simpler to write a system where it just looks ahead a certain number of moves and then uses some heuristic to, like, you need to come up with a efficient representation of the game state, or preferably of changes to the game state. Like, I can't remember exactly what I did, but like, yeah, you need some efficient compression of the game state that you can evaluate branching moves on, and then some heuristics for evaluating, is this position better than this other position? Yeah, that's basically how any game AI works. I did a simple enough version of that worked well enough for the game. Yeah, so you could play it single player against AI. I made a single player campaign that like built up the concepts of the game. It was a lot of work. I really put a ton into that game. And yeah, well, there was one level in the campaign that like it just, I don't know, some change I'd made at the last minute that was supposed to fix one thing broke something else, and this one level would crash when you run it, so the game couldn't be completed when it was released, and I like stressed the hell out about that, and like just really had a bad few days, and I was just like, no, I have to fix this, and like it wasn't good for me. Yeah, I've really learned over the years to be much more chill about that. Like, if there's a game out there and people are playing it and there's a bug, even if the bug's preventing them playing it, like, you know, usually I'm not going to release something that's like in such a bad state that it's preventing everyone play it at all. But like, sometimes it happens. Like, then they just have to wait until I fix it. Like, it always seems much more critical to me because it's my one thing. But like, they're choosing from a bunch of games, and like they'll probably just come back to it when it's fixed or not, and that's also okay. Like, yeah, it was a big deal to me, and like now, having released several different games, like it's much easier to just like, I care, but like I care a bounded amount, and I have a better evaluation of like what's actually worth my time and what's critical and what, like, you know, there's bugs that have been reported in some of my games that I probably will fix at some time, but it's just like one interaction between, like, if you're using these particular two items on this particular character, I'm like, it will maybe take me actually a few hours to fix that because I have to like get back into remembering how the systems in that game are programmed, and then track down that particular, like, sometimes it's like 20 minutes, 5 minutes even, sometimes it's super quick, but sometimes it's several hours, and like, eventually, over the years, there'll be a day where I feel like that's what I want to do, but like, most of the time, there's something more constructive to making something new that's just like more valuable to me. So yeah, I fix bugs eventually, but I I don't stress about them anymore, which is great. I've grown. But yeah, like, but that's not the worst. Like, I stressed the hell out about that game before it was released too. Like, I just didn't have a conception of like how long it takes to move from a basically working playable game to like a kind of polished, like complete thing that feels good to release as a product. I had a game that worked and I could play it, and I was like, great, I'll just like spend a couple of weeks and then I can release it. And then it was months, and I worked at a level of intensity that was appropriate for if this was done in a couple of weeks, but it wasn't, and I kept doing that, so I really like burnt myself out. It was really bad for me. There's the time around the release that I don't really have clear memories of. Like, there's just a few flashes, but like not a coherent thing, because I was stressing so much that I was in this real unhealthy state. And I remember being like, just like in the middle of the night, like, I can get this done. And I remember being at a concert, like Roger Waters' concert, like I think it was not long after I'd released it, and I was like, yeah, chilling out at a concert, and then I got home and I was like, just like checking stuff on the internet after it, to like, rather than just like enjoying that I had that experience in sleep. And I remember walking through the Schrebergarten, the allotments, because I was living in Germany at the time, which was like not good, because I was originally thought I would be there for 6 months, but in the end there for a year, and I was like, 6 months is not enough time to like learn the language, and like a year also isn't enough time to learn the language. Like, I've been in Portugal 7 years, and I can't say I don't know the language, I do, but it's not comfortable. But yeah, so I was just like isolating for all that time and not, anyway, I was just like walking amongst the allotments, and it was green and nice, and just like gradually took like a few months of just like basically every day just like going out and just like zombieing around the green spaces and gradually healing from that. And then I started making little things, and that's what Compendium came out, and it's good, and I'm happy about that. But yeah, I learned to go on a much smaller scale, and I learned to not try to do online multiplayer. Like, these days there's probably like, if you're going to do online multiplayer, you can probably use a established engine that gives much better support for that, rather than trying to write it all yourself like an idiot. But local multiplayer, like, it's not, I don't think multiplayer games are just like a good commercial option for an indie developer at all, unless you like really hit the right spot and get a bit lucky. But for what's nice to make and much less fuss to make, things you can just play on the same screen with two sides of one keyboard, like, that was great. I like that. I was also trying to do a PhD at the time. Like, that's part of why it was so stressful. Yeah, like, yeah, I'd always through school, through university, like, making games and making art was something I did on my own time, and like, you know, there was some art in school, but like, it was not usually accepting of like what I was making. Separate. Yeah, so like I did a maths degree, and I was just like following on that path. Like, yeah, I did a master's. Like, this next thing to do is a PhD. And I moved to the UK, started a PhD there. Like, had funding for that. Like, the thing with maths research is there's a lot of coming up against the wall and just like not having a sense of progress, and just like having to find the right idea or like give up on that path and like do something different or find a way around it. And I did not handle well having long periods of time where I felt like I wasn't achieving anything. And you know, making video games, I was able to get that sense of achievement in a constructive way. Like, you make something, you get something moving on the screen, you've achieved something. You add some more elements to that, you've achieved something. Like, I was able to get a tangible sense of accomplishment in a reasonable amount of time. Like, sometimes it's slower. Like, you get stuck, you have to go back, rework some systems to be able to move forward. But like, it was within a time scope that I was able to feel okay about, and mathematical research just wasn't. I would have to cultivate a lot more patience to really do that. So I did do research. I got some results. Like, yeah, it wasn't really. And so I ended up spending more and more of my time not doing what I was like officially doing and making video games, which like is like, in the end, that's fine. That's what I've ended up doing, and I'm much more respected in that than I probably ever would have ended up as a mathematician. So like, great. I felt a lot of guilt, but yeah, it was probably like rooted in childhood that like games were always like seen as like not serious, and like playing, like even like my parents referred to like me making and programming games as playing, because it was games. Like yeah, so I still had this like not really believing that making games could be like the real worthwhile contribution I was making to the world. And so I was doing like some more officially recognized thing, which like, if we're honest, like affects a lot fewer people. Like obviously like some mathematical discoveries revolutionize the world, like no question. But like a lot of what's happened doesn't. It's like it's just like maintaining that community of research from which occasionally the discoveries come, and that you need that pure work to eventually have the practical results. But like a lot of it honestly doesn't affect people. And like I mean games, like I'm not building bridges or like doing surgery or something, but like it does affect people. Like it meets people in their lives, and like that's so like honestly it's probably a lot more worthwhile. But at the time, like I felt like that's just play. Like I had this like childhood thing about that, and like this is the real work, and this is the work that I'm getting like paid, funded to do, and I'm kind of skiving up on that and doing this instead. I'm like, yeah, I got in this really like guilt thing, stressing about that as well. I guess maybe that's like part of the reason I've sort of been reluctant to take funding for my games. Because like last time I had funding, I misused it. Like in retrospect, like I was funded to do a PhD, which is like professional development to establish yourself as a researcher, a person who advances the state of knowledge of the world. And like if I look at it in a more holistic way, like everything I was doing was learning useful stuff and developing my creative and problem-solving abilities in ways that I've used in my professional life following. Very little of what I've done has fallen far from that tree of like mathematics. So like if I'd like just been able to see that as like this is my work that I'm being funded to, and just like had the supportive community of research that would have like judged that as just part of the work of mind rather than like compartmentalizing it into the right kind of research and progress, then I would have just like had a way easier emotional time of it while doing like literally the same thing, because I was going to do what I was going to do. Yeah. So yeah, I did good work, and I'm proud of it. And like yeah, I learned a lot. I've I was maybe overly discouraged from being ambitious in certain directions by just like how badly I ended up treating myself then. But that's like, it was good after that to have a time of doing much smaller projects and like really learn a lot through faster development cycles. And yeah, eventually I did bigger projects. I feel like that's still the biggest thing I've done. And like maybe now I'm being more ambitious again. It's like it just takes time to like come around. And like Imbroglio was big and complicated. Like in some senses more ambitious just from the sheer number of interacting rules. Like yeah, let's give that its credit. But yeah, the Cinco Pash sequel, whatever it is, will be bigger, and so it's not being my primary focus right now because I have to do something small to get something out to eventually get to the point of being able to make that. So like, let's just be clear about that. But yeah, I think that's the big ambitious thing I'm going to do. But yeah, I really got burnt on doing big things. That was good as well as bad, because like I did good stuff. I got discouraged from working in 3D just because like I can make a 3D game. Like I have a maths degree. I can do matrix multiplication and stuff. Like it's conceptually not that hard, but like in practice, there's just a lot that makes it take longer in 3D in terms of like a practical project. And like it's cool that vertex dispenser is in 3D. Like you can play on a sphere, you can play on a torus, like a donut ring. You can play on weird shapes, and like it's clever that like it's on this discrete node grid that like the connectivity of the grid matters. And the 3D space matters. Like you can be on a space that curves around, and so there's like 2 points that are far apart in the like territory space. Like to move from here to here, you have to go all the way around. But they're close together in the 3D space, and there's like you can build a laser that shoots in the 3D space. So it's like shooting between here and here. And if you want to fight back, you either have to build a laser to shoot back, or go all the way around to be physically present there to fight back. Like that, you know, the node space and the 3D space overlapping, like having different senses of connectivity on the same world. It's cool. Like it's cool, but like, yeah, it's almost everything that's actually good about the gameplay you could do in 2D, and it would have less with camera angles, and would be easier to make and easier to make look good, and easier to play. It's like better in every respect. So yeah. 3D should be used sparingly. Like a lot of 3D games, like most of the action happens on a plane, so it's just like a bit of jumping and aiming and occasional climbing in levels, but like 2D space is good for games. There's a result that says like on an infinite 2D plane, like if you take a random walk, the probability of eventually intersecting with where you've been before is 100%. Like that's the probability. Like obviously there are rays that just go off to infinity and never intersect, but in the space of random walks, like all but a set of measure 0 intersect themselves. So like with 100% probability, if you pick a random one, it intersects itself. In 3D, it doesn't. Like I think it's 0%. Like it's just almost every random walk, however it goes around, it just goes off in different directions, so it doesn't self-intersect. And like, that's not exactly the situation in most games, but like, you know, there are a bunch of other results that have the same kind of flavor. In 2D, even if you have infinite space, like things are going to bump into each other and interact. In 3D, like they don't, because there's just enough space out there. And like things intersecting and interacting is like kind of approximately the thing that makes games interesting. So if you want a game to work in 3D, you have to be doing something to constrain it, like have a center of gravity so that paths going out loop back in, have it, like I said, have it actually be on a 2D plane, have it, yeah, the vertex dispenser is on 2D surfaces, just embedded in 3D, like, yeah, and like most 3D games aren't fully using all 3 of the dimensions to their full extent, and that's good. Right. But if you're not going to, then like seriously consider like maybe it could just be 2D and like save yourself the cost. Yeah. The game did end up making like some money because it got in one of the early bundles, like not the Humble bundles, but like after Humble, like a few other people were starting up doing bundles inspired by that, and yeah, it got into like, I can't remember the name, but one of the earlier bundles, and I got like $20,000 or so from that, like, yeah, so for 868 Hack has made more than that. I'm not sure if any of my other games had. Like maybe Imbroglio did eventually. But yeah, like that was money from it being in a bundle with other games that people wanted, rather than because people wanted it for itself. It was. But hey, like that was good to have. It's definitely better than zero. Yeah. So. But it's hard to say what I'd go back and do differently. Like I would, if I went back, I would definitely not stress out about everything so much. But like, it would have probably been like, I'd probably got like 90% of what I got out of it just by releasing a prototype as like, here's a little indie multiplayer thing, and then move on and make more small things, rather than like, oh yeah, this is my dream game, like blah, 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 and like putting way too much into it. But on the other hand, like spending all that time on it, I did learn a lot about project management, so that's valuable. Yeah. I just wanted to like go back and talk through it and think about it, just because I realised like there was still some of that stress from those times being, you know, like emotions get stored in your body if they're not like completely released and processed, whatever that means. Yeah, I was realizing that I didn't like to really think about those times because I had this about them still being held still in my body. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to do a video, I'm going to talk about it. Like, so this is like my therapy, I guess, that I'm just being relaxed and comfortable about it and not yeah, no, that feels good. It's good to get that. And yeah, I mean the game's still available. You can, if you want to know what I thought was a cool, clever idea 12 or 14 years ago, like you can still buy it. And like I kind of don't recommend playing it multiplayer unless you can, like, there's a bug somewhere that I'm not sure what the extent of it is, but it's mostly if the latency is too high. So if you can play with people like near you, like great, but like what are the chances of that? And like but like it's just interesting to like look at it and see like what I was trying to do. Like it's just like as a ambitious kind of failed, but like weirdly spend a lot of time on RTS puzzle mashup design. Like the idea that you're like building up your territory and trying to get more territory than the other players, and but also like solving this puzzle and like trying to balance solving the puzzle between fighting and expanding, and like, you know, trying to find efficient ways to solve it that don't take too much time. So it's like it's not so much about the puzzle being hard, but it's about how you fit the puzzle moves in between the combat and strategic moves is like a interesting tension, and then like getting the high valued nodes and like defending those territorially, and like there's stuff there. And then I don't know if many people even played this, because it's not like, obviously if you go into the campaign, there's like episode 1, episode 2, I mean, I know, right? And then there's color puzzle, and like, if you're just like interested in puzzles, like, you might want to like skip the whole combat part of the game and like just go to that, but it's not well signposted. So go campaign, color puzzle, and then there's a series of non-combat, like one of them has time pressure, but the rest not real time pressure puzzle levels, which like there's some quite nice puzzles there actually. Like it's yeah, like the puzzle aspect of the real time strategy game is not like there's some complexity to it, but the depth comes from the tension between that and the strategy game going on at the same time, and it's like very few people want a frantic action game and a deep puzzle game and a territorial strategy game at the same time. It's like there's a reason it didn't take off. It's like 3 different audiences, and the intersection is me, and like yeah. But the puzzle levels is taking that colouring from it, and like they're good puzzles, and like I don't think many people saw them because they're embedded in this like ridiculous strategy game. So like if you like just puzzles, like you could check those out. Cool. And yeah, okay. I'm smiling. That's a good sign. Like joy is the absence of stress, and like embodies stored tension. So like great. This is what I wanted from this video. Thank you for listening to my therapy. Like